Hey, what's going on?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Welcome in, everybody. So, I'm joined by Seraphine, aka Greg. How long have you been pushing super high keys? It's been like a long time, right? 3-4 years?
Yeah, I've played Resto Druid since start of Season 1 BFA, and then kind of fell in love with the class ever since then. I never really reroll off of anything but Druid. I'm just strictly a Druid only player. I've recently gotten into raiding too, which has been pretty fun. Mostly just did keys all throughout BFA and rarely raided, but now I'm starting to get into raiding, so doing a little bit of both, but everything only on Druid. I will never reroll.
Torty, how long have you been playing?
How long I've been playing Druid?
Yeah. Day one?
Yeah, I leveled in Classic as a Resto Druid, actually. I was a bit of a psycho.
Oh my god. So right now you're also one of the mods and head theory crafters for the RDruid Discord, or the Druid Discord?
Yeah, not a mod, expert.
Gotcha. Alright, so today I want to talk about a couple different areas for Druid. First, start off with how the rework has gone with raids, with M+, and then we'll kind of pivot the topic over to like War Within, hero talents, some of the things that we have going on. So, like a lot of specs in the game, or like one of the more common thoughts whenever a rework happens is, okay, this is going to make my spec OP. But that didn't really seem to happen. Torty, you want to start us off when we're talking about raid stuff for this Resto Druid rework? Tell me about what it is and how it's kind of gone right and wrong.
Let's start with how this expansion started, because it started pretty weirdly.
Okay.
We had a lot of rejuve talents added. One of the rejuve talents is the infamous luxuriant soil, which spreads rejuves when rejuve ticks. And I've been very vocal about how much I hate this since Legion, because it was a Nighthold tier set before, and before that it was actually a Wrath of the Lich King tier set. And it's a pretty stupid playstyle. I never like when, first of all, overhealing gets rewarded, and two, when doing nothing gets rewarded. And it's basically like the worst of the both worlds. So you overheal and you heal more, and then you do nothing and you heal more. I don't understand why they made this talent. Like I know it was popular in Nighthold because it was super strong, and usually things that are like stupid and strong are still popular because they're strong.
What was the talent name for it again?
Luxuriant soil. It's bottom right. Two talents, like in the last third of the tree.
Got it.
I don't know. I hate it so much. Like the fact that it exists, I don't think it should.
Got it.
And so we were basically balanced around that. Like obviously, whatever you have, you're balanced around that. Doesn't matter if things are fun or not fun or strong or whatever. There were moments on some bosses, like if you took, for example, phase 1 of Sarkarath, which obviously like half the phase was with Lust, you would cast 30 rejuves and you would generate like 55 to 60 through this talent. And I don't think any spec should be designed like this.
So you're having more passive healing, like you're putting out more rejuves on people than you're actively casting on them.
Yes, yeah. Like you absolutely generated more like 50% more than you were casting if you played right. Oh, like it wasn't completely passive. Like you had to use your flourish properly, still ramp, right? But still, that thing was absolutely obnoxious and ridiculous.
Okay, and so just being rewarded for like overhealing, rewarded for like kind of spewing healing all the time without being able to like better focus it. So how is like the rework with Grove Guardians and changes really like help that or hurt that?
So the part of the rework was actually reducing the chance. Like you see, it's 1% per point. Right now, it was 1.5% per point. And that's a really large change, like an insane change. How much less rejuves you generate now, which is fair. Like I think that's fine. And they buffed rejuve to compensate, which I also like. That part was good. They basically buffed all the spells, and then they nerfed the auto generation. That's fine on its own. And then they made this plus where they said that they will tune mana and healing cities.
Right.
And yeah, what happened is that they started with Druid and they ended with Druid.
Yes.
That's how it felt to me, because
I agree.
I mean, they nerfed Divor by 3 percentage points, and that was an absolute joke. Like, if you looked at how Flourish got nerfed, that spell was absolutely nuked out of this world. I don't know what they were thinking. Like, it was just. Do you remember there was one beta patch when they made Evangelism from 1.5 minute city to 3 minute city?
I do.
Yeah,
And
that was basically that level, except it made it live. Absolutely insane.
yeah. And
So
they're
yeah,
like efforts to like butcher those cooldowns though doesn't really seem to have made that much of an impact because overhealing is still off the charts in Emirjasil.
I mean, removing burst healing in raids is just awful. Like, if you don't have burst healing, you're basically useless in raids. The things that people were posting about, they will make raids less bursty. I think they were just either coping, dreaming, or they were just absolutely stupid and didn't understand how raid healing works.
Because I mean, clearly we just had the World First Guild stacking healers that burst the best. And so if you nerf everybody's burst, it just gets down to, okay, so who's still good at bursting? And you bring those.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Druid burst just absolutely took a nosedive, especially with the addition of trees. That's another point. Like, I hate trees. If I wanted to play if I want to play a pet class, I would be a hunter.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Grove Guardians in any which way. I completely think it's very bad, and like on the Mythic Plus side, even in Raid, like it's just like too much like RNG involved in Resto Druid. Like if you like, I saved a breakdown of my Mythic Plus key that I did, and Nourish, which is like an ability that Druid has never used in like a very long time. I remember Faded, whatever, Castle Nathria. I think people were using Nourish to like actually casting Nourish on that one boss that gave you like the cheat death trinket.
Yeah,
So I think
Sun King.
yeah, so I think that was like the only time that Druid like ever really used that ability in Raid, and then I've talked to a couple of PvPers, like rarely ever are they casting that ability. So it's just very weird to see how like that ability is just like taken up all of like Druid's like healing profile. So like for example in a key, Nourish is doing like 30% of my healing. Granted that's broken down into multiple aspects like the Guardians, the 2-piece, the 4-piece. And then like if you look at the class outside of the Guardians and the 2 set and 4 set, I ultimately feel like Druid is like generally really weak outside of all of that. Like I'm sitting here in the main city casting Rejuve on myself. Granted, I don't have any mastery stacks, but Rejuve is healing me currently for 7,000 a tick. People have 1 million HP.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like personally Druid is just in a very interesting spot. They don't know what to do with it. So they're just trying to give us these guardians, and they're not going away to like try to help fix the class. Even though, like I said,
I mean,
or like
they,
Torty said, it's just you're becoming a pet healer at that
yeah.
point.
I mean, they specifically made this change in 10.2. They aura nerfed us and put Guardians in, which we kind of had to pick because they're so strong. So that was like counteracting the aura nerf with like shifting that power into the trees, which was last nail in the burst healing coffin.
Yeah. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but coming from Shadowlands, Druid also was getting a number of cooldowns that were just getting carried forward into Dragonflight talents. And so if you're having all these other resources that you have on hand, but then they water them down so that it feeds into Grove Guardians, it feeds into your pet spec, does it feel like those talents are just straight up a waste and have no impact anymore?
Well, in this patch, they like one of the talents so that we carried from 4-piece from Sepulcher is the Scenarios Guidance. It's right under the Convoke/Tree talent. It lets us proc a 10-second tree every third Swiftmount. So, and the second part of it is that every 10 seconds you spawn a tree, the small trend. That's basically gives you a CDR on the incarnation. So there's kind of synergy there, but still it was used before, since the poker, it was used together with Convoke to give burst. It's still used to give burst because you can easily pair it with a 1-minute flourish, but yeah, it's like a multi-part thing now. It's not just for burst. It's also a CDR thing now,
Okay.
and mana conservation because you spend less mana in tree.
Yeah, and so how does this feel to you rather than what we've seen from like Shadowlands or early Dragonflight? Is this gonna be better or just more frustrating having more weight putting onto the uptime?
I think this is the least fun I had. I had playing druid since Eternal Palace.
Jeez. And what about you for keys as well, Greg?
With keys, it's hard to say. I mean, I've been playing tree form. I've played a lot. Like I've done PTR keys. I've done live keys, obviously. I've played Convoke. I've played tree. I started off the season playing Convoke, and I was a fan of it. But now I've been leaning more towards tree because I feel like Druid just outside of tree form, like to heal through certain mechanics, is like essentially like I don't know, still struggles with like spot healing. Like you can have the 4-piece with like help with spot healing, but if you don't have a clear cast proc banked up, you don't have swift bends, like it's actually and somebody's taking massive single target damage, it's super hard to like heal through that as a druid currently, even like with all of those things not available. And part of the problem is like I've said this multiple times, I really hate the fact that like you have to press a GCD as a druid in 2024 before you can use Swiftmend. I think that is just completely terrible. You should be able to freely Swiftmend as a druid. I feel like it would eliminate a lot of problems. I don't know why. Like, it's just a janky mechanic. I don't know why it's still like this in the game. I know Verdant Infusion kind of exists for that, but rarely are people ever taking... It's just a very weird playstyle. I feel like Swiftmends you should be able to use it however you want. I also miss how in BFA like Prosperity was a thing where you could have 2 charges of Swiftmends and you could use your Swiftmend freely and never be punished. I I really do miss like BFA style of Druid. I feel like, you know, as I kind of hinted at earlier, they don't know what to do with the spec. It's just in a weird spot.
And so how are some of the healer challenges for like single target, like Throne of the Tides, heal absorbs, or even just some of like the prio healing that's going to be required if you had to like spam the tank on like an Oakheart grip or last boss of Darkheart where you need to spam somebody really quick before they die? Like, how are those challenges to deal with as a druid?
I mean, so Verdant Infusion has actually been one of the talents that I do play because of that reason. Like in Darkheart and Throne of the Tides, I'll specifically play that talent. Just to kind of help with spot healing, because Druid's spot healing is, in my opinion, very bad. Because you're once again relying on Swiftmend and a Clearcast proc to heal through a single target, and if you don't have either of those available, essentially you're kind of in a lot of trouble in that point. So I think Verdant Infusion is actually kind of good in those keys, but to be honest, like if Flourish wasn't so bad of a cooldown, like you would just play Flourish. But um, yeah, I've actually like considered dropping Flourish a lot in some of the keys just because it's very weak, and honestly, Tree alone is like pretty much what you're playing around Mythic Plus at the moment, is using your 3 Swiftmend cast for like holding reforestation for specific moments and mechanics, as well as actually using your tree on specific moments. Rarely is like Flourish gonna be enough to like save your whole team from like massive amounts of damage. It's not enough. Like you can't just, like last season you could say, hey guys, I'm flourishing this mechanic here, you don't really need to press anything, and it would be an extremely strong CD to heal through whatever mechanic was happening. But now, like, you really, it's like I said, you can't really do that. You can't just flourish a mechanic on the higher end of keys. It's not enough for your group to survive on its own.
And so, would you say it's fair that having tree up for just like every single big burst of damage is just going to be mandatory, or having some kind of DR to be able to overwhelm or like save people that everything is kind of focused on this one cooldown to keep others alive?
Yeah, I mean, Druid can definitely top people's like HP bars within tree very efficiently, very fast. But the damage reduction part is like what Druid struggles with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like Iron Bark being a minute and 30 seconds is completely troll when Sack exists in this game and it's double the duration or double the DR as Iron Bark and it's a 1 minute CD. So I don't know why Iron Bark has not been reduced down to 1 minute like it was in BFA. I feel like it should be to that aspect because like essentially with that like I personally feel like Resto Druid is only brought to keys for Mark of the Wild. Like and if the other
Mm-hmm.
Mark of the Wild spec is better, like Boomkin Bear or Feral, like you're never playing Resto Druid ever. Like you are only bringing Resto Druid for Mark of the Wild and that is it. And if there's like actually a bunch of keys lined up where there's like a super amount of like rot damage per dungeon, that's the only reason you would ever bring a Resto Druid to keys. It's not that they have anything to offer to help your group like Dispriest currently right now. They have so much stuff to help like your group live one shots. All these keys are about living one shots, and Resto Druid has Iron Bark, like a minute 30 cooldown, 20% DR. You could chuck it on the person at full HP, but like Keck W, you don't know if they're living or not.
Right.
I mean, it's just a bad DR. Like it needs to be changed in my opinion.
How is damage? So at the beginning of this patch, Resto Druid was doing insane amounts of damage, and then they had a couple nerfs, right?
Yeah, I mean all their cat abilities took um a good amount of damage reduction. Like I
That's
think
only in M plus though. Like it's not in raid.
yeah, it's only
Yeah.
in M plus that they took cat damage reduction on, and to be honest, I feel like they kind of over nerfed Druid like they normally do. I feel like yes, early on they were doing a lot of damage, but right now, I mean, I've seen like plenty of Disc Priests do way more damage than me running like double DPS trinkets. And part of the problem is like the higher you go in keys, like a Resto Druid's not going to be sitting in cat form 24/7 in the key. Like you're going to be healing. Once a Druid is required to heal, like your damage takes a hit. So
Mm-hmm.
like in the lower keys to start off, like a Druid was able to do massive amounts of damage with the buffs that they got to all their cat abilities, but now that things have kind of like evened out and you're at the point of like having disc gear and you're getting into the higher level keys, like I said, it's super hard to sit in cat form permanently for the whole key. So um, that's why I kind of think some of their damage got whacked harder than it actually needed to be. But I mean, I do agree that they did need some nerfs, but I feel like maybe they could have balanced it out with like maybe a Sunfire buff or a Moonfire buff in some way because like that's passive damage that you're typically always going to have like up, and getting into cat form can be somewhat challenging,
Yeah.
as keys become harder.
And in the past, we've seen M plus gated by like damn it, healer damage. It's been gated by, sometimes it's heal checks, sometimes it's just mob stops. Like you said before, it's all about just surviving the one shots. How do you just kind of in general feel about this M plus season? Because you haven't only been playing Druid. I've, of course, saw you playing Og just the other day.
Yeah, so I mean, I played Og and made one last season for like that was the first time I ever made another like character, and part of the reason was because Holy Paladin was absurdly broken. Like
Right.
nobody wanted to play with any other healer besides Holy Paladin, and normally most seasons like Resto Druid isn't meta. I would say in season 1 they were to start off like a pretty strong healer, but ended up receiving several nerfs. You could still play them towards the end of the season of Dragonflight, but ultimately like Resto Shaman, Evoker, Healer were like super super strong. So I would say that those two healers were probably a little bit better than Druid at that point, but Druid was still fairly fine. It just hasn't been like truly a meta healer since BFA season 4 in my opinion. I think right now they're kind of in the same spot as season 1 of Dragonflight. Like they're good. They're a good healer. They can do high keys, but in my personal opinion, I think Disc Priest will end up probably doing the highest of the high end of keys based on, Druid kind of getting into that point where as you get higher into the key, it's harder to heal. You can't really help your team live one shots. Like you can live a one shot as a Druid yourself, but if your teammate doesn't have a defensive and they've been picked like multiple times, like Racking Pain, for example,
Mm-hmm.
on the last boss of a Atoll, your bark is a minute and 30. You kind of have to have like a prot paladin there in a sense to, fill the gaps that you would need assistance with because the druid essentially doesn't have the tools to, help somebody in a scenario like that outside of, Iron Bark being on cooldown.
Yeah, and with all this burst, I know Tettles and Thune made a video recently talking about like the ridiculous amount of like defensive creep that a lot of specs have experienced. Do you think the druid's in that boat where they have so many different things that you have to balance around, or do you think it's more just like a widespread issue that like some specs just have so many different DRs, like Priest has like 3 different like personal DRs that they can have for themselves, and then other specs are just kind of like left out in the cold?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would agree with that. I've played a Holy Priest in Raid for a very small amount of time, and
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen the defensives that they have like in their tools, and Druid essentially just has bark skin, and outside of that, like you have to go bare form, and going bare form, in my opinion, like kind of sucks. I mean, I know it's part of the tools that Druid has, but like spending the GCD when you could just like stand still as another healer and not, use that GCD or two to, go bare form is really, I don't know, in my opinion, kind of a pain point. And like, if you look at the Druid tree, there's Iron Fur on the Druid tree, which every single Druid has to spec into to always path down through Thick Hide, which every Druid is going to do. And
Hmm.
no other Druid spec is going to press that button besides Bear. So I don't know why that ability is on the tree. I wish that there was like some amount of like passive DR replacing that talent and removed there, or just giving the druid like essentially another point, because the druid tree itself is just, you know, I mean, I'm just gonna say it's just straight up dog shit. Like the druid tree is so bad, it needs like whoever's designed it like needs to just consider reworking it completely. I feel like any Resto Druid knows that this tree is bad. You suffer immensely by being forced to like go down through paths that you just have to.
So with this
And there's
example of
just,
like Iron Fur, like why don't they just make it so that like when you jump into bear form, you gain Iron Fur for like 2 seconds or something like that? So at least you got something, even if it's not going to help you for like racking pain. At least you get some kind of value. Because I mean, can't
well,
expect bears to like swap in and out of the bear form when they're tanking something.
yeah, I mean that's what Ursine like Vigor does. Is it's kind of right below Stampeding Roar, which is a talent that I take a lot in like the higher end of keys. Like I'm always putting 2 points into that. So you shift bear form, for 4 seconds. You have increased armor and 20% stamina. That point, those talent points, those are just kind of like on Tyrannical. Those are like 1, if not 2, are auto locked like to that
Mhm.
right there. I mean,
But
there's
then
just two.
you just have to take Iron Fur to be able to
Yeah,
even get down that path or get on your way to the path.
exactly. Yeah, Iron Fur should just not be on the tree. I think improved Sunfire is also another ability that's questionable. That's on the Druid tree on the far right. I mean, Sunfire has been baseline AoE for I feel like a long time on Druid. I mean, I didn't really play in Legion. I don't know if it was baseline or not, like AoE.
Yeah,
I
it
But
think
was.
so. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
it was.
so I feel like them making that single target is just completely troll. Like just another point that forces the Druid to take in their tree when, ultimately they're kind of starving on points on the left-hand
Mm.
side.
I mean, the range extra range we'll have to take the 3% versatility is also great. And then I think we're the only class left in the game with a 3-point talent
Yeah, I was
as
I was
well.
also gonna comment on that. I think Lucara's teaching the 3-point talent is
Oh my
absurd that
god.
it should just be 2 points and the same like max effects that you get from it. It's just too many like BS points you have to take on Druid, and you're kind of just like auto locked to taking it. There's no like,
Right. There's no
there,
route around this.
yeah, there's no way around it. You're just stuck with it. So
That's so weird. Okay, so Priest just recently had something where to like get Powered Life or Benevolence, which is like a 3% healing increase, that gave you like another route. It's almost like making like Ursine Vigor would like take you to Stampeding Roar, or like Forest Walk would take you to Renewal or something. And they like did that for Priest, and I was like, like that wasn't that necessary, but it's cool that I can have that option now. And like, I've never seen a 3-point talent. I had no idea this existed.
yeah, and actually somebody messaged me something that I've also forgot about is like Soothe. Like Soothe, you're kind of just gated behind taking Soothe. You're forced to take that. I feel like in Raid, you're never soothing as a Resto Druid,
Yeah.
literally ever. That's a button that's just completely useless. Same thing with Mythic Plus. There's like very few dungeons where you're needing to soothe, and outside of like Raging Week, that's the only time you're ever pressing that button. So it's just like another useless point that the Druid is just forced to take. It's like that tree is just like handicapping like most Druid specs, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really just need to add more connections and put some spells into the spell book instead of whatever this is.
I would agree. Yeah.
Do you think there's too many points that are in the tree as well that could be just completely pruned down, or more connections and maybe some reorganization would be the answer?
More connections, more spells in the spell book. I don't understand their love of putting spells into that into the class trees. I think most of them should be available anyway. Like the fact that most of the time I play without Typhoon or without Incapro or without Maim, which were generally spells I always had. Like I don't think I had Cyclone once in this entire expansion. Like this is just stupid. It's on the left. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like Cyclone was basically the Druid spell since TVC, and now I can't even spec into it. Like it's not a big deal. I just don't understand why that's the thing. If I'm being honest.
yeah, I would agree. You're forced to spec into too much stuff, like as a druid, and as a healer in raid, you may not use like Incap Roar. Typhoon could possibly see some use in some raid mechanics, but in Mythic Plus, like as a druid, you're kind of just like expected to take one, if not two, and it's like you can't just like walk into a key with literally nothing. And getting these points is like super challenging because like you're already having to give up so much. Like pretty much what I'm realizing is to get like some stuff that you want, like utility wise, or maybe even to help your own damage out, you have to like give up DR or healing to get it as a druid, which in my opinion is just weird that you're like even put in that position. So like Nature's Vigil is an ability that I'm ultimately really sad that like not many people are playing it this season. You're playing it in Raid, I would say more than anything, but in Mythic Plus you're like rarely using that ability because the cat
This
talents are too strong right now. So.
Nature's Vigil took, I think, like 3 separate nerfs this
Oh my
expansion
god.
first.
Yeah.
This
Oh
thing
my
got
god.
shot.
It's been nerfed for no reason in my opinion too. Like it's just I don't get it. I
I
actually
mean, we
just
got a drive bite by Munkins and Ferals. That's
Yep.
literally what happened.
Yeah, I would agree.
They halved the duration on it. Like it used to be 30 seconds, and now it's 15 seconds
Yep.
because of the Munkins and Ferals. And then our Flourish moved from 1.5 minute cooldown to 1 minute cooldown, so it no longer aligns. They also removed verdancy from it as well. Like verdancy no longer procs it. Like just insane how many nerfs this spell took.
Yeah, and how has that been affecting you as well for a raiding environment for like this season? Torty, have you been still progging full time on Druid?
No, I did. I only did what's his name, Firakas Druid, because I didn't want to play Holy Priest.
Gotcha.
I have strong opinions about Holy Priest.
I know. Greg's already giving me strong opinions about this priest and everything too. I've been trying to hold my tongue.
I mean, yeah, it's well. I mean, obviously Druid is good, but in my, like I said, in my personal opinion, I think Disc is just really good for this season because it just can help the team live one shots, which Druid cannot do. So,
Yeah.
Okay, I just checked. Some fun fact on Mythic Ferak on my kill in 485 item level, my Nature's Vigil did 30% less DPS than my Nature's Vigil did on my first Kurog Grim Totem kill when I was in, what level was I? 420.
Oh god, I want to see these screenshots. I'll pull them up.
yeah, I mean, I've rated as Druid this tier. I've killed everything up to Tindral. I'm not playing Fire Rack, but Druid's damage is embarrassing in raid. If at least to say, like, Nature's Vigil is pretty much going to be what is doing most of your damage in raid, and you're doing like 10 to 15k DPS in raid as a healer, as a Druid at the moment, with Nature's Vigil doing most of the bulk work there, because you're once again as a Druid just so mana thirsty in raid that, in my opinion, it kind of hurts suppress Sunfire and Moonfire and have like big uptime on it throughout, raid boss, just because the class is just always, struggling with mana, having way too many mana problems, even in Mythic Plus.
Yeah, here I
Druid is
see
just always suffering.
4 million damage on Mythic Ferak with Torty here. With, what is this, like a 40 item level difference? Or no, actually it's gonna be like 100 something eye level difference. Where is it at? 420
like
versus yeah, okay,
45.
65 eye level difference. Doing almost 800k a cast at a Nature's Vigil on Kurog Grim Totem. Now you're doing just shy of 700 a cast.
And also,
with
I
16
don't know
eye
if
levels.
most people know this, but Nature's Vigil is also capped. So that was like we couldn't, like we reached the damage cap from Nature's Vigil very easily. So Nature's Vigil, it doesn't do damage every time you heal. It accumulates your healing and then does damage, and that damage is dealt every GCD, I believe, and it's capped at 3 times your spell power.
So if you're doing too much healing, then you just don't do more damage.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's a very weird interaction, and part of the problem, like, with the Nature's Vigil and like Innervate too, I feel like Druid once again got hit in the crosshairs from, Boomkin and Feral. Like, those talents were really good for Boomy and Feral. Last season there's kind of like people were talking about, I think Theon mentioned that it was like an Innervate meta where, your Boomy, your Feral, whatever you may had, just spam innervated your, healers on cooldown, and Druid was just, Resto Druid specifically was hit with, an Innervate nerf for, essentially no reason, when they're already struggling in raid with mana problems. They're already struggling in most content with, mana problems, and I'm just wondering, like, why that happened.
Well,
why...
really, I don't like. There was also abundance nerf, which was a rate targeted nerf. We had a lot of rejuves, so we were very often sitting at 20 abundance stacks, which made the and then we actually have much lower rejuve count now, and they kept our abundance at 12 stacks. Like that nerf actually, like, you need to do either one or the other. That was actually rewarding gameplay. Like, that part was good, and it should be good right now, because like if I ramp really well, I should be rewarded with that abundance. Like, just I don't know. It feels like the spec was just dumbed down, and how do I call it? Like the skill cap got lower for sure.
And that also hurts you a lot for ad healing in raids, right?
I mean, I don't even touch hands. Like, it's just stupid. We were progging phase 2 Ferak, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, like, we had only one priest, so we could do only one void shift, right? So we had like 2 trees. At some point, our monk was saying, like, I need some help here. Well, it was just one of the first pulls in phase 2, right? So the healing is still not figured out. And I did a tree with Innervate, spamming regrowths into the tree. And then we checked the logs, and my regrowths were literally hitting for less than flash heals of a Disc Priest.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's pretty much the reason, like, I told my guild, like, I didn't want to suffer on Fire Rack and just like sit me, because if I have to heal and add on that boss, like, I'm gonna just myself from it, and I'm also just gonna do no healing to it.
Yeah.
Like you're essentially just you're useless to the ad healing. You could heal the raid well, but you're not going to be able to do anything
Yeah,
as a
I
druid
mean,
on that.
some damage patterns are not that bad for Resto Druid this tier. Like especially, for example, Tindral is like has good damage patterns for Resto Druid. Another part why you don't want to spot heal in the raid and you don't want to heal those ads is because we're using amalgams, the trinket. And
Oh, yeah.
basically, what I want to do is I want to like put a rejuve on the target or regrowth on the target, and then not touch them for 6 seconds. Because if I cast on them again, I lose like 600 mana.
Mm-hmm.
Like that cast is just 600 mana, costs 600 more, basically. And if I'm spamming into one target, it's an insane amount of mana I lose for that, as opposed to like spreading my healing on the raid. So like on Ferak, I was basically like a passenger. I was a fourth healer that never took the important jobs and just you know a fourth healer, like how you would imagine it.
Yeah, just the passenger that's gonna be along for the ride.
Yeah, yeah. When I was talking about like Holy Priest, I wasn't like against their strength or whatever. I just
Yeah.
don't enjoy this pack. I don't vibe with this pack. Like I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of people don't vibe with Druid. I know Jack doesn't vibe with Druid. It just happens to, I
I
guess.
got you guys on, okay? Come on.
Yeah. No, I mean,
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I don't mind Holy Priest. I just don't want to spend 200 plus pulls playing a spec I don't enjoy.
That's right. And getting to a point where this raid requires so much burst healing, and you guys have had your burst healing nerfed, where it requires a lot of ad healing, and the things that you could have had support or could have had better ad healing get nerfed, like you've mentioned before. It just feels bad for going through this entire tier, especially when it's the last raid tier of the X pack.
Yeah, I mean Druid just, I don't know. I feel like season 2 Druid was extremely strong in raid. It was, in my opinion, that was like my first season I took raiding pretty serious, and I had a ton of fun. I don't know if some people maybe didn't like the playstyle, but like this season in raid, like I don't know, I personally feel like it's kind of miserable. Like I don't enjoy raiding on most bosses. Torty kind of said it. Like Tindral is probably one of the more fun bosses a druid can play because you have tree, you have ramp for like every single seed set, so you're just, and like that's where the group is just like completely rotting away, and you can do a lot there to help your raid out in those spots. But some other fights it's pretty painful as a druid.
So let's talk about those hero talents, because there's Keeper of the Grove that they released, I think, and then there's the Illusions Chosen. So it's the only Keeper of the Grove we've seen so far that interacts with Resto Druid. You guys had a chance to look at these and have some early impressions for them?
Yeah, I mean it's another take on those stupid trends. I don't know why they keep pushing them. I don't think they're fun at all.
Yeah, and I actually haven't seen anybody like really respond positively to like the treant gameplay. And so if it's something that is already interacting with the spec that you don't like how they've already changed it to begin with, and it's feeding more of that, like what's that been like telling you, or how is that making you guys feel so far about the War Within?
I mean, I just think they're putting the trends like too much on the druid with the tread gameplay that they like just don't know what to do with the spec at this point. Like in raid, like rejuve is a really strong talent because you're just spamming rejuve. It's gonna do, you know, if not your number one behind the guardians, like, or number two, it's gonna be one of your top two healing throughout raid. But in like Mythic Plus, rejuve is at the very lower end of like Mythic Plus. I'm looking at a key I did yesterday. Rejuve was number 12 on my list. Like so that's where like the guardians are kind of coming in, because rejuve can be strong in raid because you're taking rejuve talents, but in Mythic Plus, like rejuve is essentially nothing. It's used for a mastery stack, if anything.
This tree is just criminal. It's like somebody said in chat, 5% max mana is actually war crime. I agree. This is like insanely stupid. We have 0 interactions with max mana. Like Disc at least has shield discipline if you choose to spec into it. You have Shadowfiend Mindbender.
Right.
But this is just insane. We have nothing with max mana. It's just like flat amount of mana, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty poor talent. And then, like, you just struggle as a druid with mana, and then you have Mistweavers just walking around chugging, their mana brew back and
Yep.
regenerating 3 times the amount of mana any other healer is doing. Disc Priest has their Mindbender, which I mean, obviously Disc has some mana problems, but Mindbender helps like alleviate some of that. And
So I'd actually agree. I don't think that Disc has like any sort of like mana problems in like a raid whatsoever. In fact, like compared to previous iterations of Disc where you like were the one dependent on the innervate to survive, like you don't need it at all this tier for any boss fight.
yeah, and as like a druid, you have nothing to help. You have the trinket that
Yeah.
Torty mentioned. That's your only source of mana regen in raid, and then you have like your innervate. But innervate is just nerfed because healers have been, in my opinion, I don't know. I feel like they've penalized healers a lot over the past couple of like nerfs. Like I don't. That's why it's just confusing to figure out what they want to do with healers in general and like druid in general. I just like I think last season they thought healers were maybe too strong, so they've like nerfed their cooldowns and tried to increase the spot healing. But I don't know if I essentially agree with that change that they did.
I mean, we had essentially, I don't know, like the spec actually didn't change that much. Like we had small changes each expansion, right? And I felt like there was a working formula in BFA and how Resto Druid worked in both raids and M+. Like you had two distinctive playstyles. The M+ was more, I would say, hot oriented instead of burst oriented. Like you stacked hots and hots and hots and did all this like small heals, I guess, but you still healed yourself, and both damage worked well. Like you had fine passive damage through Sunfire and good ability to like increase your DPS by going cat form. And then in raids, it's actually kind of wild because right now we have our rejuve is like 20 to 24-second duration on average, and it also spreads, and it feels worse to cast than BFA rejuve, which had a 16-second duration, and it couldn't spread. It just was like flat 16 seconds. That's it. I think like BFA Druid in the raid, especially like with experience by the end of Nylothar, I think Nylothar Druid was the most fun I had playing Resto Druid like ever.
Oh my god. Yeah, I actually miss corruption. Like druid and keys stacking full versatility and some expedient. Like that was the most fun I've ever had playing Resto Druid. I ultimately miss the BFA version of Resto Druid. Like I was typing this in the Druid Discord the other day. Like Rejuve is a staple ability for Resto Druid. It's like what they heal with on Classic, right? So like, and me as a keyer, and obviously I raid a little bit. I feel like Rejuve is just like completely worthless in keys now. Like it's just you can't press like Rejuve on somebody and expect them to live a mechanic. In a higher end key, they're just gonna fall over and die.
Okay, so
And
next expansion though, these hero talents are coming one way or another. What do you think they should? What do you think these hero talents should look like, or what should they like? What gaps should they fill in? What niche should they like operate in?
I don't like, dude. Every time they try buffing something that's not rejuve, it turns out complete ass. It's weak and not fun. So like, stop trying to invent a wheel. First of all, they need to nerf the bottom part of the druid tree because the talents there are way too strong, and most of them are not fun at all, with few exceptions like Flourish, Incarnation, and Reforestation. I think those three can stay, but talents like Luxuriant Soil that spreads rejuves, Nurturing Dormancy that increases rejuve duration when you overheal, and
Invigorate, a talent that nobody uses at all in this game for any amount of content that just exists in the bottom row for some odd reason. Like, please delete that talent and put something else there. That talent is worthless. Like, it's just, yeah, Druid is just like, they just toss shit at the Druid, like, talent trees and just, you just have it there and you're just stuck with it. And it's just, I don't know what the hero talents will do to save that. It seems like looking at them, they're mainly treant oriented.
I'd rather more power was put into like spells itself instead of procs and Especially, I think this luxuriant soil and nurturing dormancy are extremely idiotic design choices. You should never be rewarded for overhealing, and you should never auto heal.
Yeah, I would agree.
So would you be happy with hero talents if it just like buff redroof and just like didn't have any like crazy overheal support or like spreading it overheal just to be overhealing?
Yeah, would you like they could add some, for example, instead of that max mana talent, add some mana regen based on max mana at some point. Instead of trance, they could, I don't know, like some sort of proc on the wild growth, maybe. Like there were a lot of effects that they could use, and a lot of passives
Yeah.
as well. I don't know why they choose trance out of all things.
I would agree. Like trends are new. Like these just came in last season, and now they're designing the whole hero talents like with a lot of trend focus. So it's just very odd to see that those are like choice nodes that are in there. I will say though, like from a Mythic Plus POV, Trends of the Moon is actually really nice change. I've been wanting like something like Twin Moonfire um, on Resto Druid for a very long time to help them with damage in Mythic Plus because you essentially play keys like an Affliction Warlock to a certain extent as a Druid. You're Sunfiring the pack when it's grouped, you're multi-moon firing, you're rake and ripping, a bunch of mobs, thrashing, swiping, like you have a lot of like nonsense that you have to go through when like you could just have something like Twin Moonfire that Boomkin has, that Feral has, that Bear has, but everything has but Resto Druid. And it seems like this talent is kind of going to help them with that. I don't know how the interaction will work, but it kind of gives me the vibe that it will play like Twin Moonfire, which I'm a big fan of.
Makes sense. All right. Final closing thoughts. What should they be doing to Resto Druid in Fated Season or War Within that saves the spec, makes it better, makes it more fun? Go.
First of all, buff Flourish. I don't think the spec works at all without Flourish, and I don't think it will ever be fun without good Flourish. Put more power into spells instead of talents, especially in the bottom part of the tree. Fix the fucking class tree. That thing is an abomination. I don't think there is a single druid spec that actually enjoys class tree. I talked to feral druids and moonkin druids and guardian druids, and they all hate it because it's complete dog shit. You're picking talents that for the spells that you already had and the effects that you already had, and then you are still missing some that you had before. Yeah, I mean, I want to ramp with Rejuve, not be a terrible healer that
Right.
heals rot damage. We're not even good at rot damage. That's the thing. Like that's actually so stupid. Because of nurturing dormancy, we're now bad at rot damage. It's insane. They nerfed burst and didn't give us rot damage healing. Yeah, I mean, even last year, I don't know if many people know, but for example, on Magmarax, the last minute of Magmarax, Druid was terrible at that because your rejuves didn't extend since everybody was permanently below 100% health, so you couldn't spread your rejuves, and then you just like your HPS took a nosedive. Like a Resto Druid needs people to go to full health to leverage Nurturing Dormancy, which I I think this expansion was terrible for Resto Druid gameplay. We had like an insanely strong tier in last year in Iberus. It was probably the strongest Resto Druid was since Legion, I would say, like compared to other healers. Like Nighthold was comparable, maybe, in
Yeah.
terms of how strong Resto Druid was. But in terms of gameplay, I was just from start to finish, I did not enjoy it at all.
Up to you here, Greg. What can they fix? What should they be changing? Final thoughts. What do you got?
Definitely would agree with some stuff that Torty said, like Flourish, being a little bit more powerful than what it actually is. I would like them to redesign the Druid tree on the left. I feel like it's for sure terrible. Needs something done there. I would like to be able to freely swift mend as a druid, not be auto locked to using a GCD. Um, I would like to, yeah, just be able to freely swiftbend like I did in BFA on Resto Druid and not just be penalized for pressing the ability, like using the GCD on it. I would like Ironbark to be a 1 minute CD, like BFA, not 1 minute 30.
BFA
and
Classic, it's coming soon.
yeah.
Yeah, unironically, last patch of BFA, I had played over Dragonflight.
And
Oh,
let's
yeah.
see what else. Honestly, I would just those three right there. I would
Yeah.
be a happy. I'd be a happy camper with you know, just those three, and it's not even asking for a lot. Like those are simple changes. I feel like most druids know that the class tree is very bad, and you know, that would fix a lot of problems that they have. And then you know, having Ironbark be a 1 minute cooldown is something that I would personally myself enjoy as a Mythic Pluser, and same with the Swift Bend. Those are small changes that I don't think are making the class broken in any which way. They're like more or less quality of life changes is what I would want.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, that's a good idea for a hero talent, by the way. Make Swiftment not consume a hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could do something with healer talents on Swiftbend, like have prosperity potentially there, like giving the druid another Swiftbend because they still struggle with spot healing. Like, you know, single target healing is always going to be very hard for a Resto Druid.
I think more leverage on the hots would also be cool. Like replace Luxuriant Soil with 2-piece tier from Sepulchre when every Rejuve tick had a chance to proc a hot. I mean, like, there were a lot of good effects before, and they chose stupid effects.
Understandable. Yeah, I am kind of curious to see how much like actual Dragonflight talent changes we're gonna see versus only like hero talent stuff. Some specs might just get like straight up reworked alongside reworked hero talents. So don't worry, I will pray for you guys. All right, the priest here is gonna pray for you guys to get some changes. But thank you so much again for being on. If you have any like social links or anything for the YouTube video when I put it up, feel free to drop them in like the group chat and everything. And yeah, once we get more hero talents, I might hit you guys up for some more questions about how you're feeling about those when they're not like the current druid hero talents where half of them are question marks.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it is definitely odd to see half of them, but yeah, lastly, I would like to say thank you for having me on. I do appreciate your time and, you know, obviously getting me involved in this. I'm a very passionate druid player, like I said earlier on. I never want to reroll from this class. I want it to be successful, and you know, that's all I want. I just want to play my Resto Druid and you know, be a happy little
And gain
BFA
IO.
druid. So, yep.
Hell yeah, dude. Yeah, you bet. Happy to, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks
Yeah.
for having us.
Anytime, dude. Take it easy, guys. Thanks for joining.
See ya.
See ya.
Take care. Bye.
Woo. And I didn't talk smack about Resto Druid one time, guys, okay? Incredible amounts of self-control, I promise.